I'm Dr. Katariina Rosenblatt, and this is my story of overcoming human trafficking as a child and domestic violence. I grew up in North Miami, Florida, and my father was a Jewish businessman. When I was 13 years old, I was first recruited into sex trafficking. I was at a hotel with my mom. She left my abusive dad once again, which she did several times. So we were staying at this hotel for the summer. My mom would take two buses to go work for my dad, but we kids would play at the beach and go to the pool. And well, at this hotel, there was a trafficking ring that recruited me at the pool area. They could tell that I was lacking self-esteem. I was overweight. I felt sorry for myself because of the abuse from my dad. I didn't know how to process it. There wasn't any type of real counseling that was offered to me. When this older girl approached me at the pool, her name was Mary, and she told me that she wanted to be a friend to me. And she made me feel special, and she mirrored a lot of the pain that she said her dad treated her like that. And so I thought I had found a common ground with someone, and we were supposed to be best friends, sisters. The first experience I had with Mary was they had me go to this hotel room. This was a hotel, moderately priced hotel, Miami Beach. And she goes, "There is a man that wants to be a dad just to you." And I said, "Really?" She said, "Yeah. And we're going to play a game, and you're going to get to be the bride. And I want you to come tomorrow and meet me in the stairwell. Do you have a white dress?" I said, "I do have a little jean dress. I love that dress." And I was like, "Okay, I'll wear my little white jean dress, my jag dress." And she goes, "Okay, and we'll meet you in the stairwell. I'll meet you in the stairwell, and I'll take you to him. He wants to take you to dinner, to the mall, to the movies, whatever little kids wanted to do with your dad." That's what she said we were going to do. So she set it up like it was going to be a game. I went to meet her. I put my mom's makeup on, and she knocked on this hotel room, and out came this 65-year-old tourist that apparently was staying at the hotel just looking to purchase with children. And he was half dressed, disgusting, had a beer belly, gray dress slacks, and he opened the door and invited us inside. There in the hotel room, I started to realize that this was not a friendship. This wasn't a man that wanted to be a father to me, this older man that they were trying to sell me to for my virginity. None of this was real. And to make a long story short, he kicked us out of the room, and Mary turned on me and she was like, "You better not tell your mom." And she became like a bully and threatening me. And I felt like I had just lost the best friend in my entire life, because over the course of the month, which is, how long it took for her to gain my trust, maybe even sooner, I thought she was my best friend, the best thing that ever happened to me. Somebody who had time for me, somebody who listened to me, somebody who talked to me. But no, all that time, what she was doing was investing in this payoff that was going to come in this room. $550, he offered to pay $500 for me. And Mary said, "No, she's a virgin. I want $550. And it's just terrible to see that people exploit the trust and innocence and beauty of children to make a buck, to make $1. And so when I didn't agree to take that she had prepared on a plate, he got angry and he said, would anyone miss you if you were gone?" They were ready to just kidnap me and have me, perform with him and then be part of their trafficking ring, move me around from hotel to hotel, which is what happens to girls. And then you can't even remember where you started. You don't know your name. You can't figure out what happened to you. And I've met so many girls like that, even at that place. When I did not go along with this situation with this man, I said, "My mom would miss me." Yes, she would hear me scream, and I'll scream really loud. He got angry and he kicked us out. And that's what saved me. This is her job. She invested all that time into this job to get her payday. And so I went to the hotel room. I didn't tell my mom. She saw me crying, and she knew instinctively, because she knew I was with Mary. She said, "I don't want you hanging around that girl. That girl is bad news. And I don't have a good feeling about her." And so for her to say that, it made me step up and say, okay, there must be something wrong. Now I'm feeling bad. My mom is seeing it. So I'm not going to go with Mary anymore. And I cried the whole night. I felt like I messed up. You always take the blame as the victim, like it's your fault, and it's not. So the next trafficking experience I had was with my friend in middle school. I started 7th grade, and it was like almost immediately after, I wound up taking a public bus to school. My mom found an apartment to get us away from this bad situation. And then I transferred to a different school, to JFK, which is where I was trafficked. So when I went to JFK, I hung out with all the kids that were being abused. And somehow you have a clique. You click together, you understand each other. So we would hang out in the morning. We were called the burnouts. And, my mom had told me say no to all of that. But now I was in middle school. I'm a big kid. At least I felt the peer pressure. And so my friend invited us, after a couple months into the school year, she invited us for a sleepover at her house in North Miami Beach. And so we went for a sleepover, and there her dad was a trafficker, and her dad was using his daughter, who he was abusing also. She was abused by her dad and her brother, unfortunately. And so she wound up recruiting other girls who came from an abusive background to sleep over. And instead of having pool parties and pancakes, she wound up, bringing us to her house, which was men, her dad, and these fishermen buddies of his would come over, and they gave us, and all the say no to drugs thing went out the window. It was like, oh no. And these men, there was one man in particular, the first one that I had experienced. So he paid her dad. I saw him pay her dad $40. He picked the girls that he wanted, me and my other friend that went to school together. And we went into the car. Her dad had us drive with his friend, who I later found out is called like an enforcer or whatever, and took us to the brothel, which was the false apartment that they used for. I was sitting there, and it was my turn, and I was going to go in with this guy. And I just remember feeling like, I had already been there for a couple of weeks, and it still brings me so much shame because my mom raised me better than that. I did get away. I did feel God in my heart at one time when this man went to buy cigarettes, the enforcer, and he left because he wouldn't let us out of the apartment. They would bring us food or whatever, whenever they did. But he left, and I remember feeling like I can leave. This was my turn, and I need to get out of here. And so I was waiting for my turn with the guy in the room, to have with him. And I remember thinking that I just can get free. Like, oh, wait a minute. Okay. So all the and everything, it didn't matter. Right now, I heard from God, I have a plan for you, and this is not it. And I just got the strength to get to the door, unlock it, and run away. And I got out into the daylight, and there were people looking at me, but they were looking at me like, who is this juvenile delinquent? They weren't looking at me like, how can we help her? Are you lost, little girl? So they came and got me, and they were with my friend that had been in the room with the guy. And I said to her, listen, this is not what they're telling us. I just had this moment of clarity. I said, they don't love us. You can believe whatever you want, but I know it. I know that he doesn't love us because he wouldn't be with both of us. This is all a lie. And I started realizing it. And I told her that. And she was just like, Kat, if you don't come back now, we are both going to be in serious trouble. I said, okay, I will get in the car. And I told the guy, but I want to go home. I would not stop fighting. And if you make a problem for them, yes, if they have guns, you could put yourself in danger. But you know what? You're in danger anyway. You can die of, which a lot of survivors do. A lot of victims, while you're a victim, you can be exposed to STDs that there's no cure for, no drugs for, because they're not going to help you get medicine. You can experience murder from them, if you piss them off or do something wrong. So you can die anyway, but instead just keep fighting. Fight for your freedom. And so I fought back, and I went back to my friend's house. They brought me there. They sat me down in a chair, these three grown men, and they were like, you know what? You are going to get us in trouble. You don't want to go along with this. We know where you live, where your mom lives, where your friends are. We know who your friends are at school, and we're going to tell them what you've done. And, they're anything to manipulate me, to get me to, so that I would just go along with it. And honestly, it doesn't take a lot for a 14-year-old to get discouraged and to succumb to that kind of pressure. So I finally said, you know what? That's fine. I know how abuse works. I'm good. I'm not going to say a word. Can I just please go home? And so they let me call my mom. They were on the other end of the phone. Back then there was like 2 extensions, and they were like threatening me, like, we are going to kill your family. We're going to beat you up. We're going to do all these terrible things if you tell anyone. I was like, I'm not going to say a word. And I didn't for 20 years. I didn't say anything. I never told anyone. And my mom picked me up. My abusive dad was driving. And so I had a choice to make. Do I tell my mom and get her beat? Or do I tell my dad and get both of us in trouble? So I just decided to take care of it myself and not say anything. And I went home, took a hot shower. So the third one, so now what happened is I have this vulnerability of drug addiction because I became very addicted to. What happened when I went back to school, they had planted in my purse and got me suspended to send a message that this is what happens if you tell anyone. Okay. So I dropped out of school. That's how I got recruited in the third trafficking. So now I have another layer of vulnerability. I'm at home all the time. I have plenty of time on my hands. My mom still has to go to work. She's trying to homeschool me. And I'm just like, not disciplined at all. It was in my elevator of my apartment building. My friend, who was a runaway, also, dealing with some challenges at home, she came to live with us. And both of us are just out of school, doing whatever we want to do during the day. And this dude is in our elevator. I mean, you can see the progression, how from 13 to now 15, I'm like a bad girl. Like a lot of people would consider me having been a bad girl. I considered me that. And this guy, he saw the addiction, that hunger for was not leaving me. And, I had gotten addicted to in my middle school. And so this man was a 7-year-old Cuban pimp. And in Miami, Florida, there's a lot of Cubans. So he was like, oh, you like the white stuff? Come to my apartment, with his little Cuban accent. I'll be a grandfather to you. I'll do homework with you, just really sweet and telling us all the things we wanted to hear. Like he would ask us, do you have a dad at home? No, we don't have a dad. Okay, well, you know what? I'm here for you. And I'm here all day. I'm your neighbor. I'm just I'm literally around the corner. We just decide, let's go see what's up with that. My mom's working all day. Her family's in shambles. So we go to this old guy's house. And of course, at first, he's just really sweet, giving us café con leche, which is coffee with milk, and, galletitas, little crackers. And he's just like as sweet as can be. Neither of us have like a legit grandfather that we can talk to. We never experienced that. At least my grandparents, were deceased. I didn't know what that was like. And my dad's working abusive. So I didn't have a healthy male. I'm like, this is kind of nice. He didn't ask us for anything off the bat. He gained our trust. Again, that's what traffickers do. They gain your trust. All the girls would hang out with this old guy. Like, I don't know how nobody saw that as weird. Like, he's 70 years old and has no children of his own, but yet all these young guys come over. They were his dealers. They would bring him, kilos of whatever, however they processed it. I didn't even know, because they would come in, bring a kilo, pick the girl they wanted, go have with her, or take us in the bathroom. And I remember one young guy that I really fell in love with. I didn't know the difference. Again, looking for love. And he was so sweet. He was so good looking, but I'm a kid, 14, 15, I had dropped out of middle school. Like, how pathetic is that? And I just felt so bad for myself. And this guy was like, just taking care of me. And he would give the pimp and then he would take me into the bathroom, teach me how to do things to him. And then he would leave, or we would go to another brothel, another house, with the bigger dealers, and they would do the same and use us in there to, service the men or whatever, and give us free. When you're in the middle of this kind of lifestyle, you really believe you're living your best life. I think anytime you're around money, a lot of times you can get sucked into this lie that this is the best life until you get faced with a reality. And that's what happened, is that they sold me to a man. I was 15 years old at this point, in the dealer's other house. So this other house was just, again, like a brothel. And I went upstairs to his bedroom, and this 35-year-old man was having with me. And I remember at that moment looking over and seeing, you know, how the dressers have like a mirror, and looking at my body, and like I'm barely developed. And I'm like, how did I get here? So now I just remember praying. I prayed and I said, God, I don't know what's going on, but please help me. And it was almost like sending up, you know, the bat signal because God came in and this man could not get, he couldn't finish. He had raped me, but it did not work. And he took me downstairs and threw me on the ground. And he said, this whore you gave me is cursed. And that was my wake up call. And I backed out of the apartment. I said, you know what? Don't tell them I was even here. Well, they didn't take that too well. They would stop me. If I went to the store to buy something, they would stop me. They would have girls chasing me down. But this time I told my mom, look, they gave me, that's all I told her. I didn't tell her the other stuff because I was too ashamed, but I knew she would be really mad and she would help me. And this time she went to the manager, she told them, the manager of the building, and she got them kicked out, thank God. But they didn't stop still, you know, they moved, but they still kept sending girls to try to get me back. Little by little, getting my self-esteem back, going into modeling school, feeling good about my looks, you know, people there helping me. Yes, there were still girls in the modeling school trying to get me to do bad stuff and go out partying and all that. And I was like, no, I'm done with that. And at this point, I was just dating my ex-husband. I did feel safer. So it was kind of like we gave each other something, you know, he gave me that sense of protection, a false sense of protection, because he would later become very, very abusive. And in exchange, I gave him his green card. I did it for love, not realizing he was using me. It would take me years and years to figure that out. But I became pregnant at 17. And like I said, before I got pregnant, I fell into another false modeling scam. But because I had my ex-husband, because I had my mom, and I was off this time, I told my mom and I went to the police with her. And we told the Hollywood Police Department. But because the guy who violated me was a retired police detective, his name was Eddie Egan. He was the former NYPD that they made the French Connection about, that movie. And so he actually was a trafficker and a pedophile, and he's abused me and was planning to exploit me to other people. Him and his agent or whoever it was that I met, they did exploit me and abuse me. And when I went to the police station, I escaped. He wasn't going to let me go home. He kidnapped me. He kidnapped me in his office. I told my mom, I told my boyfriend, my ex-husband was my boyfriend. So we all agreed, I'm going to go to the police department. And I told my mom, and I go to the police department. Now I'm telling all this to the cop, and the cop knows who he is. But what does he choose to do? He chooses to brush it under the rug. And he said, no one's going to believe you, a juvenile delinquent, over him, a decorated retired police detective. Left. I was smoking at the time, and he's like, look at you smoking, 17 years old, you know, shaming me in front of my mom. And I remember outside the police station, my mom looked at me and she goes, you don't have to be what that man is telling you and what all these men are trying to make you. She knew I had been in something because I changed. I wasn't this sweet, innocent, vulnerable little girl anymore. Now I was like hardened. And I looked over and I saw this bus go by with a university, and I said, okay, in order to live in this legitimate square world, I have to get an education. I have to become someone if I'm going to function in a real regular life. In 2011, when I got my freedom papers, then I decided to start a nonprofit called There Is Hope for Me. And I wanted other survivors of domestic violence and human trafficking to find that there's hope, that they don't have to stay stuck in this role, in this situation, that they can get free and they can be better than what these people are telling them. Like my mom would always tell me, you don't have to be what these men are making you. They don't have to be that. This situation actually turned out to be a blessing for many thousands of survivors of both human trafficking and domestic violence. And after leaving him, that was just the beginning of doors opening wide for me to share my story, find my voice, write Stolen, the true story of a trafficking survivor. That was my memoir. And then Trafficking in America, my dissertation. I graduated with my PhD in 2014. Yes, and it was such an honor. I even went on to law school after for a couple of years before my mom got sick. And then I had the privilege of being her caretaker before she went home to be with the Lord. but it has been a very fulfilling journey to use my life to help others. And I plan to continue. And God keeps giving me breath. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I know it can sometimes be hard to hear and even triggering, but I want you to know that you're not alone. And if you've experienced any of these situations, trafficking or any type of exploitation or abuse, just know that it's not your fault and you didn't deserve it. There's hope for you and there is help. So you can contact the National Human Trafficking Hotline. You can also go onto my website, there'shopeforme.org, for additional resources. And you can follow me on my journey on the social media links below. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for educating yourself. And thanks so much for engaging.